The flight was supposed to be easy. Flight 6117 lifted off from Istanbul just after sunset, heading toward London Heathrow. The sky was clear. The passengers were relaxed. Some slept. Some watched movies. Some stared out at the clouds glowing orange beneath the setting sun. In seat 14A, 17-year-old Aisha Malik tightened her seatbelt and looked out the window. Flying always made her nervous, but also excited. Her father used to be a pilot. Before he passed away, he taught her everything he knew. She had spent years on flight simulators, memorizing checklists, learning procedures most adults never touched. Still today, she was just a passenger, nothing more. At 35,000 feet, the seatbelt sign turned off. A flight attendant walked down the aisle, smiling, offering drinks. Soft music played through the cabin speakers. Then, bang! The plane shook violently. Screams erupted. Luggage fell from overhead bins. Oxygen masks dropped without warning. A deep, terrifying rumble echoed through the aircraft. Aisha's heart slammed into her chest. Smoke began pouring from the left side of the cabin. "Fire!" someone yelled. Panic spread like wildfire. Passengers stood up, shouting, crying, praying. A child screamed for his mother. A man clutched his chest, the cabin filled with chaos and fear. Up front, inside the cockpit, red warning lights flashed everywhere. Engine fire. The captain grabbed the controls. "Shut it down!" The co-pilot reached for the switches, but before he could finish, another explosion rocked the plane. The aircraft lurched to the left, dropping hundreds of feet in seconds. The captain slammed back in his seat, unconscious. "Captain!" the co-pilot shouted. No response. The co-pilot was alone, over London airspace, with a burning engine. In the cabin, flight attendants struggled to keep order. "Please remain seated," one shouted, her voice trembling. "Put your oxygen masks on." But fear doesn't listen to instructions. Aisha forced herself to breathe slowly. She pulled the oxygen mask over her face and helped the elderly woman beside her do the same. Her eyes scanned the cabin. Smoke, flames licking near the wing, the smell of burning fuel. She knew that smell. Her father had described it once. The worst smell a pilot can ever know. The plane dipped again. People screamed louder. Aisha closed her eyes for a moment. "Think." She remembered her father's words. When everyone panics, that's when a pilot must be calm. She unbuckled her seatbelt. A flight attendant rushed toward her. "Miss, sit down!" "There's a fire," Aisha said. "The cockpit needs help." The attendant stared at her, shocked. "How do you know?" "Because the left engine just failed, and we're yawing to port," Aisha replied quickly. The attendant froze. No passenger talked like that. Another violent shake threw people against there. The attendant grabbed her radio. "Cockpit, do you copy?" "Seats." "Static." No response. Fear crossed the attendant's face. Aisha made a decision that would change her life forever. "I need to get to the cockpit," she said firmly. "That's not allowed," the attendant protested. The plane dropped again. Passengers screamed prayers in different languages. The attendant hesitated, then nodded. "Come with me." They pushed forward through the aisle as smoke thickened. Aisha's heart pounded, but her mind was clear. Every step felt unreal, like a dream she couldn't wake from. They reached the cockpit door. It was unlocked. Inside, the scene was chaos. The captain was slumped over, bleeding from his forehead. The co-pilot struggled with the controls, sweat pouring down his face. "Thank God," he said when he saw the attendant. "I've lost engine 1. Fire suppression is failing." His eyes fell on Aisha. "Who is she?" Aisha swallowed. "My name is Aisha Malik. I've trained on simulators. I know procedures. Please let me help." The co-pilot laughed nervously. "You're a child." Another alarm blared. "Engine 2, overheat." The laughter vanished. The co-pilot looked back at the instruments, then at the unconscious captain, then at the girl. "How old are you?" he asked quietly. 17. Silence. Below them, the lights of London spread out like a sea of stars. So many people, so many lives, including 275 passengers on board. The co-pilot took a deep breath. "Sit," he said, pointing to the captain's seat. Aisha stepped forward. As she placed her hands on the controls, the plane shuddered violently, fire flashing outside the cockpit window. And somewhere deep inside her, Aisha realized one terrifying truth. If she failed, no one would survive. The moment Aisha sat in the captain's seat, the weight of the aircraft seemed to press down on her chest. The control yoke vibrated in her hands. Warning alarms screamed without mercy. Red lights flashed across the panel like a battlefield of signals. Engine fire, hydraulic failure, cabin smoke. Outside the cockpit window, flames danced along the left wing. "Stay with me," the co-pilot said, his voice tight. "Just stay with me." Aisha nodded, forcing herself to breathe slowly. "London Control," the co-pilot said into the radio. "We have an incapacitated captain. One engine on fire, the second overheating, and—" He hesitated, then continued. "We have a civilian assisting." There was a pause. Then a calm voice answered. "Flight 617, this is London Control. We hear you. We're here." Aisha felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them away. "Reduce thrust on engine 2, the controller instructed. "You're clear to descend. Emergency landing approved." The plane shook as Aisha followed the instructions. Her hands remembered what her heart feared to forget. Every hour she had spent on simulators, every lesson her father had drilled into her, it all came rushing back. "Easy," she whispered to herself. "Easy." Smoke seeped into the cockpit. The co-pilot coughed, wiping his eyes. In the cabin, panic had turned into raw terror. Passengers clutched each other. Parents covered their children's faces. Some prayed loudly. Others stared in silence, convinced they were seeing their final moments. A flight attendant grabbed the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice shaking but strong, "we are making an emergency landing. Please brace for impact." Aisha heard the words echo through the cockpit. Brace for impact. Her heart raced. The city of London rose beneath them. Buildings, roads, rivers, lights. Too close, too fast. "Speed's too high," the co-pilot warned. "I know," Aisha replied. She gently pulled back on the yoke, adjusting the descent angle. Her arms burned. Sweat dripped into her eyes. "Flaps," she said. The co-pilot moved instantly. Suddenly the right engine screamed. A loud boom shook the plane. The aircraft dropped violently. Screams filled the cabin. Aisha gasped as the controls went loose for a terrifying second. "Hydraulics!" the co-pilot shouted. Aisha's mind raced. Manual control, just like the simulator. She tightened her grip and compensated with rudder input, her movements small but precise. The plane steadied, barely. London Control's voice returned faster now. "Flight 6117, RAF Typhoon jets are airborne. They'll guide you in." Seconds later, 2 fighter jets appeared, one on each side of the aircraft, steady and unshaken. Aisha stared at them, awe mixing with fear. "You're doing great," the co-pilot said softly. "You're really doing great." She didn't answer. She couldn't. Every ounce of her focus was locked onto the runway ahead. Heathrow, the longest runway, their only chance. Fire trucks lined the ground like soldiers waiting for battle. "Landing gear," London Control instructed. Aisha hesitated for half a second, then nodded. "Gear down!" The co-pilot pulled the lever. A loud clunk echoed through the aircraft. The green lights blinked on. Cheers erupted faintly from the cabin, hope breaking through fear. But the plane was still coming in too fast. "Pull back," the co-pilot urged. "I can't," Aisha said through clenched teeth. "If I pull too much, we stall." The runway rushed toward them. 500 feet. 400. 300. Her hands trembled. "Dad," she thought. She remembered his smile, his voice. "Trust the plane and trust yourself." 200 feet. She gently flared the nose. The plane floated. For one terrifying second, it felt like they would overshoot. Then, third, the wheels hit the runway. The aircraft bounced once. Passengers screamed again. Aisha corrected instantly, holding the center line. "Reverse thrust!" The remaining engine howled as brakes screamed in protest. The co-pilot yelled. Fire surrounded the wings. Smoke filled the cabin. The plane slowed. Slower. Slower. Then it stopped. Silence. Pure, unreal silence. Then the cabin exploded with sound. Cheering, crying, laughter, prayers. Aisha's hands slipped from the controls. Her entire body shook as the adrenaline drained away. The co-pilot stared at her in disbelief. "You did it," he whispered. She laughed once, and then burst into tears. Firefighters stormed the plane, doors opened, slides deployed. Passengers rushed out, many kissing the ground, many turning back to look at the aircraft that almost became their grave. Paramedics helped Aisha out of the cockpit. Her legs barely worked. Outside, cameras flashed. Emergency lights painted the night red and blue. When Aisha stepped onto the runway wrapped in a blanket, the crowd went quiet. She was small, young, just a girl, yet she had saved 275 lives. The next morning, headlines spread across the world. Plane catches fire over London. 17-year-old girl lands, it saves 275 lives. Officials praised her courage. Pilots called her a miracle. Strangers called her a hero. Aisha said nothing. She visited the hospital where the captain was recovering. She placed a small photo on his bedside table, her and her father, standing beside a small training plane. "He taught me," she said softly. That night alone, Aisha looked up at the sky. Planes crossed silently above her. She smiled through tears. She didn't save those lives because she was fearless. She saved them because when everything was burning and falling apart, she chose to fly. "If you want next, I can."